And I've got more topics to cover that maybe we'll get to, maybe not. But as always, I'm joined by Chief Chris Kipp, Columbia Fire Department. And as I said, Joe Palmer, Jamie Helms. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks, sir.
So one of the things that's come out of the officers section, one of the best products that I've seen come out of the association as a whole is the Fire Officer Academy. And, you know, it's something that as leaders in the fire service, we've talked about for a long time, how to pull it off. A lot of people have done it maybe locally in their department, but Rick Dunn and his crew have put this thing together and have done a fabulous job with it. And what I would like to do on this episode is give Rick an opportunity to talk about this Fire Officer Academy. So Rick, if you would, just tell us what it's about and what y'all accomplished.
Well, I thank you, Will. I think the biggest thing is as the Officer Academy was kind of an idea that conceptually was around for a few years, several years, and we were able to last year in May to do our first one, and we just completed the second one. So far, we had about 43 officers from across the state go through the program, and one from Georgia actually this last time, and it covers a lot. I mean, it really is talking about the instructor cadre is incredible, from Thomas Tardo, Andrew Morris, Ben Crenshaw, Dominic Boyce, Jason Poole, and then we have guest instructors that come in, everybody from Jonah Smith to Micah Raines, Blake Carty, and Nick Ray and his crew from North Spartanburg. So they all come in and just doing some incredible work. It's really about marrying the NCO Academy concept along with firefighting and being proficient in skills, but taking those lessons of time management and leadership and motivation and training and all of those parts and kind of put it together. So those officers, when they leave, it's about their organization and how they can make it better. And we've had some really great comments, both from the students as well as from their fire chiefs. And we have another one that will be starting up in October. Application period for that starts in June, the first week in June. We'll run an application period. So they'll go through 20 weeks of online training. That's a requirement. And then after that, they'll be selected and then enter this week-long program. It's a Sunday through Friday. So intense, motivating, exciting program.
And Rick, and I'll tell you one of the things that I really love about it. And I've been fortunate enough that you've invited me in 2 times to come in there and speak with the crew. But what I really love is the people that arrive there leave different. They're different people when they leave. They're different leaders. And to me, that's kind of, the feather in the cap of the program is that the program's making a difference. So I really appreciate what y'all done and the work y'all put in and what it takes to get it done.
And the students, they work very hard, and the comments we get at the end of it is it does change them, resets their careers, resets their attitudes, resets their motivation. And that's truly what it was all about. How do you take back to your organization and make it better? Because we know that the company officer is the cultural change agent for all organizations. And that's truly what we build into the program, is how they can change the culture of their organization. It's not the fire chief, it's not the firefighter, it's the company officer. And that's the focus of that program, to help them understand that.
Well, and one of the benefits of the program, that if somebody's going to apply to be in this program, they're motivated. So what these people are exposed to are people from all over our state, and now one from Georgia, of like minds. That because a lot of times you're in your department and you think, well, this guy's a do nothing or isn't motivated, and I'm by myself. No, there's people all over this state that have the same mindset and same passion and same motivation that you have. And I think it exposes them to that. And because of that, they feed off each other, and they probably learn as much from each other as the instructors.
They do. And they build that network. I know the class in May, and I'm sure this class is building it as well. They still talk to each other. The class from May of last year, they have a group text that they talk to each other about just going through something, how do you handle this? What about this training exercise, whatever that is? And they connect to that point because there are like-minded people out there who really want to make a difference, not just say they want to make a difference or wear the t-shirt. They truly are going to put in the work. They're going to earn it to the point of it gives them something special. And the ones who have graduated this program are special. And we're thankful to be and blessed to be part of that, to be able to bring them together.
Well, Rick, I thank you for sharing that with the group. I know that you always said that I'm a behind the scenes guy and you're supposed to be like off camera, but I appreciate you talking to us about that program and telling everybody about it, because I know the word's getting out, but it's not spreading like wildfire like I think it should. So anytime we get an opportunity to coach people to apply and to put in, I think that's what we need to be doing. I'd love to have 70 applicants and you can only take, you had 40, but you can only take so many, and it gets more.
We can do 25. We can do 25 at a time. And and really from our first one, the Jive was born from that. We had these conversations every evening with the students out on the bay floor. And I know you and Chief Kip were part of that conversation, and you guys got together and decided you wanted to keep doing these. And so here we are every month doing one. So, we'll continue to do that until nobody tunes in. Then we'll just record them and keep going.
That's right. I have fun if nobody watches. I don't care. I mean, this is a group of guys to be talking with, and I do this for fun. But I will transition right in, and I was going to talk about this at the end, but I want to, and if you get the newsletter from the officer section, you had the election update. So that'll be held, and one of y'all may have to get back online, but it's on June, correct? The elections are in June. And we are electing all positions except, help me out.
Okay, so you made me jump back in. So
That's right.
yeah, the section elections will be happening. The ballots right now we're starting next week for the nomination period for that. Accepting nominations for first vice chair, second vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. The only position that ascends, or really two positions that will stay on that board, would be the first vice chair will ascend into the chair position. Starting in June, that'll be Matt Tidwell with Greer Fire Department. And then Chief Kip is as the chair this year will be going to past chair. So he'll be there to help mentor Matt and help him along moving forward. So definitely information will go out to the section. And if they're on here, they're in the section because that was a requirement for them to be here. So something to be going out to them next week.
Okay, get back off camera.
I'm leaving.
Okay, so why that's important now is because things are happening with this section. Things are moving forward with this section. Things are being accomplished with this section. So because of that, it's important that we get good leaders in the section. Chief Kip, you've done a great job. Andrew did a great job of kind of taking us where we need to go. Now you're going to be moving off, and it's going to be time for somebody else to pick up and run with it and keep pushing us forward.
Yeah, that's right. And and the big theme this year was about community and supporting the community of fire service leaders. And that's just the beginning of what we can build on. I'm really excited to see what happens next.
Well, you can definitely be proud of your run as chair. It's been a good run, and I think you've laid the foundation. You and Andrew both, I think you've laid the foundation of where this should go and will go. Mm-hmm. As long as other leaders like yourself fill those positions. Don't let these elections go by and nobody run, or we're just finding somebody at the last minute to fill a spot. That ain't how we build something great.
That's right. That's right.
At some point, I know, Rick, you want me to get to what we're really here for. So we're here for part 2 of Joe Palmer. Stop me.
No, we're not gonna get off that fast because I'm gonna sing Kip's praises too. Chief Kip has been a great addition to the executive committee, because now what's important about this from a larger association perspective is that the individual who leads this section sits in the room with the executive committee and has a stake in the larger goings on of the fire service of South Carolina. And Chief Kipp has done a great job of that this year, and Chief Tidwell will do the same thing behind him. But nonetheless, it's important for all these people running, and it's important for me because just my stake in what the association means and how important it is to have this individual or group of individuals be a sounding board to send things to that group. So I just wanted to sing praises, but at the same time, just give fair warning that it's an important part of representation to the larger association. Thank you.
Thank you. Now may I continue, Joe? Yeah, okay. So what Joe's talking about is you're on the committee in the room with a voice. So that's the important part, is you got a voice. And, you know, there's only a certain number of voting members, but somebody at the table who doesn't have a vote may carry the voice that may sway the entire group on a direction that we go as an association. So yeah, it's an extremely important position, important for the officer section, but as you say, important to the association as a whole. The little things, Joe. And we'll get into yeah, so this is part 2 of Joe Palmer's servant leadership. As I explained last time, when Joe was put to pasture, we said, look, we're not letting him go without him imparting wisdom on the group. And Rick did a great job of filming the series. And by now, if you haven't watched the series, shame on you. I think it'll take you entirely, 20 minutes? And, you know, it's really quick videos with some great items in it, discussion items and things to think about. And you kind of talk without saying your name, things that you did as you were coming up, made a difference in your career. And I think we did last time, we talked about motivation and those kind of things. So what I want to get into is your part 2 today, is the little things. And if you would, I would like to talk a little bit about, well, a little bit, we'll wear that out. So we're going to talk some little things. And then I want Chief Helms to tell me how those little things made a difference in his career as he's come up as well.
Thank you. I'll try my best. And I hope that if you watch those videos, it doesn't put you to sleep too bad, because Out the Pasture is a good representation, because we're out the pasture doing most of the filming. So I had fun doing those. And to me, one of the core functions of it is integrity. And how do you demonstrate integrity as an individual or as a leader is oftentimes the little things that you do. And, you know, we train and we prepare and we think about major incidents and life-saving efforts, and all of that is just, you know, there's no way to understate the importance of it. You have to focus on those things. But I can judge a reflection oftentimes by an individual just on some of the little things that they do or don't do. And whether that's picking up a piece of trash in the hallway, or whether that's getting in with a crew to clean an engine, or whether that's just simply the way you present yourself on a day in and day out basis. Those little things that you bring to the table speak volumes about the character that you are on the inside. And you see it in whether it's the way you dress, the way you present yourself, the way you speak and present yourself to other officers. And it's a representation of who you are and a representation of those other people that you have to work with and work for, and others that work for you, as to what kind of character and what kind of person you are. And you immediately begin to set expectations, and you begin to assume a mantle about you that people expect. And as that core of integrity is there, that they want to see out of you, and it's not fake. Can't fake it. It's got to be a real component of who you are, because if you're just doing it to fake it, you can smell somebody doing that a mile away. But if you have that in your heart, you have it in your mind, the little things just naturally flow. It's not an effort. It's not something you're walking around looking for every day. It just naturally occurs to you. You know, it's something that you do because it's your nature. And so those little things to me are really important to people that work around me and that work with me on projects. The people that I like to have come work around me, and we've got great representations of that. The association is just people that sometimes can focus on the little things, and it makes a difference in all of our lives.
And so, you know, the title of that segment was The Little Things.
Yep.
but really they're not small things. They're not little things. Sometimes they may be the biggest impact on somebody who is following you or a subordinate or even leading you. They're little things because you don't care if it gets noticed. You're not doing it because it gets noticed. You're doing it because it's the right, or you feel it's the right thing to do. It's part of your core values. So in the discussion, you talk about, picking up a piece of trash that maybe 3 people walk by, and you're picking it up just because of your pride in your department, or not because you're worried about repercussions for not picking it up. You just do it because it's right. Colin Powell talks about sweating the details. And there's a lot of people that say, don't worry, get mucked down in the weeds, don't sweat the details. But he's a believer in the details, the little things. So Chief Helms, if you could talk a little bit about your career and how that impacts your career and where you came up.
Well, I think it started before I started in the fire department, just with the work ethic of my father and watching him and my grandfather and some of the things that they did and how they carried themselves. But, when you come when I came into the Columbia Fire Department at 18, one of the first things, and Rick can attest to this, they wanted to teach was how to mop the floor. And you would sit here and say, I didn't come here to be a mopper. I came here to be a firefighter. But they were teaching you really and truly discipline and how you do things, and you do things in a methodical manner, and how you clean your truck and how you inspect stuff. And so I think that was just ingrained in me as a kid, first of all, both before I really was on the job and then when I hit the job, I was still a kid. But I think that was, I got a very dear friend, and he always would say, the little things, it's like a toe hold. If you can get your toe in the door, next thing you know, you got your foot in the door. You've gotta have those little daily things that keep you as a disciplined person and help you hold on to that disciplined attitude and that disciplined culture. How you wear your uniform, how you shine your, back then we shined our shoes every day, sometimes 3 and 4 times a day. It was just those little things made you understand the importance of how we carry ourselves as firefighters in our profession and in our cities and in our little towns and wherever else we're coming from. Paying attention to detail is what people see. You were talking about picking trash up. I mean, there's times that, I would walk around with somebody and see the trash and say, let's see if they pick it up. Knowing that they didn't, I'm going to turn and go back and get it. And you just pick up on what they're, I guess, kind of how they carry themselves, but more so, are they a person that wants to be detailed? And when you look at how we do things on a fire scene, we worry about minute details. We should, and we do, and how we do that. But I think it starts with just that little small daily stuff that you do over and over. And I was very fortunate. I had some great officers and some great firefighters that I came in behind and carried me all the way through. And how we took care of the trucks and how we took care of, washing windows and cleaning tile. And I know that sounds kind of petty to some of these guys, but it does make you better as a more well-rounded employee or a bit more well-rounded firefighter, in my opinion. Just fortunate to have the right people to follow behind.
Chief Kip, I was going to say, how many people do you have with Columbia Fire?
Roughly 500 or so.
So I would imagine it's not that easy to send the ranks at Columbia Fire.
Right.
I mean, that's competition, right?
Right.
So I would love to hear your insight on those details, little things that you do, and that makes you the difference, or how it made a difference in your career.
Well, one thing I wanted to piggyback on what Jamie said is, you said the little things, that's what people see. And I think that's really important, to actually think about it as communication. Because as leaders, and I have to back up a second, I really believe that everyone has a role as a leader. As soon as someone asks another person for advice or guidance, or even watching what they're doing for help, that person becomes a leader. And as leaders, everything we do communicates something about us to those around. So for instance, I was just thinking while you were talking, I can remember, back in the firehouse, everyone's sitting around the table, or maybe, it's in the evening, sitting on the couches watching a movie or something, and the alarm sounds. If that leader of that company slowly gets up from the couch and shuffles over to the bathroom before going out on the fire, that communicates so much to his or her entire company. So, in thinking about the little things, and all of us as leaders, and again, I mean, everybody in the fire service, we have to think, everyone's eyes are on us. And that's a privilege and a huge burden, because every single thing we do communicates something. For instance, usually I wear a long sleeve shirt, and and if I am having a long day and I roll the sleeves up, people notice that and suddenly think I'm slouching or something. So even the smallest things can communicate more than we can imagine, and it's something to be very conscious about. But about Joe, about your story about picking up trash, I remember when I was a very young firefighter, my captain, we were pulling into a fire station, and one of the firefighters got off the truck to back up the truck, and on the way picked up some trash, and he said that guy's going to go a long way, and he did. And so it's, these little things that we do might appear little, but they reflect and communicate very deep habits sometimes.
I live down a dirt road. My driveway is gravel, but it's not really strictly gravel. It's something called crush and run, and most people know what that is. But crush and run is just number 6 rocks, kind of the size of a peach pit. But the number 6 rock has granite washings, little bitty pieces all mixed in with that rock. And what that screenings does, that concrete screenings, is it makes that crush and run set up almost like concrete. So my driveway, if you're out playing ball with the girls, you don't want to fall in my driveway because it's solid as a rock. What makes that driveway solid are those little things. That concrete screening, those little pieces, they're pinhead size. But when those things set up together, those little things have made that driveway rock solid. And it's the same exact way with an individual. All those little things combined, you may have those big pieces of that granite as part of your character, but all those little things together make you rock solid.
Well, Will, he just dropped the mic on us all right there with his analogy, didn't he?
Yeah, he was waiting. You always get that from Joe, and it's going to be construction or farm related. So I'm sure,
That's
What
right.
you know, you go with what you know.
segment, I'm sure he's going to use analogy of some kind of goat, and it's going to be a great lesson. So, but I think you're exactly on the nose, Joe. I think those little things tell us who you are. When everything, you can talk about what you want, you can pretend to be whatever, but it's those little things that really tell you who you are. So it's going to be granite hard or water soft. And those little things identify that. But so we talked about those little things in that behavior, which takes us right back into your next segment, participating and setting the example, which to me is probably one of the most important things as a company officer, is setting that example.
We were talking before we turned on this live switch that we had the fortunate ability to attend the health and safety conference in Cincinnati earlier this week. And no matter whether the topic was cancer prevention or cardiac wellness or home life health, everything came back to the company officer. Came back to the ability, and I know that's a lot of weight. That's tough. I know that sounds harsh, but the reality of it is, and each of you have said this here previously tonight, comes back to the ability of what that officer represents and the tone and the value that he sets. Whether Chief Kip, you roll up your sleeves and people notice that, it all comes back to that character, does it not? I mean, if I want to impact the ability of my crew not to contract a terrible disease like cancer, what kind of person am I to say to them, just get back on a rig, let's go back to the house after this fire? What kind of person am I to say, take your SCBA off before we've cleared the atmosphere? What kind of person would I be to say, let's don't clean your gear when you get back? On and on and on and on and on. If I don't do those things, yes, easy. Okay, let's just take the easy route. We don't do any of that. 10 years down the road, the cumulative effects of all these carcinogens have wiped out my crew. And that's real stuff because I've lived it. Half the people that have retired around me are dead because of this kind of stuff. And so as a leader or that company officer, how can I stress the importance of somebody's diet or somebody's cardiovascular wellness or their ability to do the right thing when it comes to deconning their gear, on and on, fill in the blanks, you know, 1,000 of them. And that's just set by the tone and example of what that officer is, plain and simple.
Mhm.
And well, so the example of the company officer is different now than I think when we were coming up. And, you know, a couple of y'all a little older than me, and y'all had, you know, when y'all came into the fire service, you still had the World War II guys that you did what they said, and that's what you did. So it wasn't so much as the example, you just followed orders. I think now the example's more important than it was then. I will also say that I have learned as much from the examples set by my bad leaders as my good ones.
Yeah.
You know, it's on me to decipher what that example means. Now, if you want to be a quality company officer, you need to be setting a good example, no question about it. So Chief Helms, your take on setting an example and how you go about that day to day. You know, I mean, anybody can do it once. How do you go about it day by day? And that's who you are.
Well, I think, you know, people may argue with me that know me that I work under. I'm not somebody that sits back and tries to analyze a lot of what I did or what I didn't do, but you know, I always just try to be consistent as much as possible. I mean, we're all imperfect people living in a very imperfect world, and I think that consistency was kind of key with me. There's obviously a lot of things that you sitting back and would look and say, you know, I wish I would have done this or known this or done that. But I try to treat them the way I would want to be treated, and I try to just be that steady, same guy every day when you came in. If I'm having a bad day, I still tried to not let it get on my shoulders. The higher you go up, the more pressure you get. Sometimes that's hard to do. But you know, I really don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I just wanted people to see that, you know, we're here to do a job. We're here to be a family, and we're here to take care of, you know, the people that we serve. We want to stay disciplined, and we want to be that company that people could depend on. And I just try to, I guess, without getting on a soapbox and preaching, just try to live that example and hope that people would see that and fall in line. I'm sure if you talk to a lot of folks that work for me, you know, Jonah Smith or some of those guys, they would tell you a lot of things that they didn't like that I did, or they would tell you some things that they've incorporated into what they're doing. You know, I just always feel like, you know, we're imperfect people in an imperfect world, and we try to set a course and stay our course. And you know, I hear you talk about the mission a lot, and back then, you know, we didn't really have a true defined mission statement, so to speak. But our mission was to be hard-nosed firefighters, know our job, do our job, and be ready for whatever come our way. And that's kind of what, you know, I hope that the example that I was setting for other people, that was kind of the officers I had. That was kind of the firefighters that I worked for and I worked with. And I really wanted to try to carry that mentality. I guess today we call that culture, but I wanted that culture to be part of my firehouse that I was in charge of for that 24 hours. You know, I really think that the company officer is probably the toughest job. I know it's the toughest job in the fire service. I really believe that. But I don't think we realize that until we're well outside of that company officer level and we're looking at it from above and looking down, and you don't really realize the impact you have, both positive and negative, on people. And I just, you know, I don't know, Will. I mean, I don't know if I'm answering your question or if I'm just rambling, but I think that in you know, in today's world, we have different types of mentalities. You know, we didn't ask why. We wondered why, but we didn't ask. In today's world, we have to explain, and I think that's a good thing. And maybe being a father, that's helped me understand that a little bit better. And I just wanted people to have someone that they knew was going to lead them the best that he could, and going to stand behind them even when they were wrong. I'm going to be there with you. I mean, that was something that was taught to me at a young age. You know, you get called to the carpet. Your officer said you were wrong, but I'm standing here with you because I believe in you. And I wanted people to understand it. You know, I believe in you. I trust you. I trust you with my life, and I hope you're trusting me. And that was just our culture in my firehouse, or in our firehouse. We wanted that to be a common bond. And hopefully, you know, you sit back and you look at the people you work for and you see where they're going and what they're doing. And you either figure I did something right or I didn't do something bad enough to screw them up. And that's kind of how I looked at it.
You know, early on, you said that you hope that they saw the example you set, and you know, you said you did some things that you would do differently if you had to go back and do it. I don't think there's a fire officer, a leader, or a person that doesn't have that. Now, and you mentioned it, I always talk about it, that my focus is the mission. I don't waver on the mission. And my intent is always just. Now, I've made some mistakes on how I've handled some different situations, but my focus is the same and my intent's the same. So that's the example that I hope to set. Chief Kip, what I would like to know, is there a difference between Chris Kip and Chief Kip?
Yes. Lots of differences. The first that comes to mind is when I was an engineer, I took meticulous pride in my truck and making sure every detail was, you know, totally clean. Everything was working. I was up under the truck or in the halfway in the pump panel, trying to do everything I could to make it the best truck possible. And I remember one of my firefighters once happened to see the inside of my personal vehicle and said, "Chief Kip, how can you be this way with the fire truck and totally opposite with your personal car?" And I think it had to do with intentionality, or being intentional. And as soon as I walked into a firehouse, or as soon as I put on the uniform, I meant it. And I shed the Chris Kip of home and the civil world, and became whatever rank Kip, who was a servant. And that fire truck was not mine, it was the community's. And my time wasn't mine, it was the community's. And our mission was not to do things of my interest, but it was to do things, to prepare to take care of the community, or to be taking care of them. So it was almost like a switch. So that's an interesting question to ask, though.
Yeah, well, so my question would be, there's I wouldn't say personality switch, but there's difference between Chief Kip and Chris Kip.
Right.
What about core values? Is there any change in Chief Kip and Chris Kip in core values?
No, I think the core values are the same, and that's an interesting thought. Because, and I would, I've talked about this in our group before, but my wager is that every one of us in the fire service, all 17,000 in South Carolina, have at least a small ember that is the same, that we're here to be servants. And For some of us, it's a huge burning flame that we see all the time, like you guys. But even the most despondent, disgruntled employee, I believe, has that small ember. And I also believe it's one of the jobs of leaders, or one of our opportunities, and can be a mark of our greatest successes, is when we can take those members and ignite those embers. But that service is common, and that is what is the same between Chief Kip and Chris Kip. Whether, if I'm wearing the uniform, I'm focused on service, and at home, that's similar.
Yeah, so me and you are still building our friendship, and oddly enough, a lot of it's been online. It's been over Zoom, but we're still building that relationship. But I have a good impression of how I believe your kids behave, just based on who you are as a fire officer. And so what I'm saying is, the example you're setting at home is probably the same example you're setting at the firehouse. And in seeing that, I see some squared away fire officers that are all doing the right things, core values, all that, usually have some pretty good kids. Now, not 100%, because some kids are just bad. But to me, there's a correlation. If you got core values at work, or you got core values at home, usually they meld. So I was just curious of what the difference was between Chief and Chris.
It just looks different on the outside, probably.
Yeah. Now, for me, I don't. I have to struggle very hard to keep my language clean on the podcast, because I'm pretty disciplined as far as doing the right things in most times, but my language is a little colorful. So that's the thing I have to tone down at work versus just hanging out with the guys, or like my friends.
What about you? You same question. What's the Will Vinay at home like?
I'm pretty much the same. So whether I'm Chief Vinay, whether I'm Coach Vinay, or I'm Dad, I'm usually the same guy. I'm the guy you go to for advice. I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. Now, I do think I'm probably funnier outside of work than work, because you have to deal with a lot of serious stuff, but I try to be the same guy, even keeled. But there is a switch that I turn on when I cross that bridge. That okay, now I'm Chief Vinay, and you may handle situations a little different. But like Jamie talked about, being consistent is important. Being consistent at work and home is important. Who you are every day, that can be the same guy. Even if you're an asshole, if you're the same asshole every day, I can deal with that. It's tough when you're up and down.
One of the leading causes of divorce rates in firefighters is this switch and that question that you just asked. Because pros and cons, are you the same person? Okay, you could argue, and I would answer that no, I'm not the same person. The demeanor that I have and the way I approach things are very different at work than it is when I'm at home. Are the core values the same? Yes, absolutely. That sets up who you are, and you're not fake one place or the other. But if there is that fakeness level, or if there is this difficulty in adapting to those two different environments, there leads to problems either in discipline at work or problems of marriage and family management at home. And that is prevalent. Just because of, Chris, what you said is that you want, when you come to work, to be able to have that spark. And we have the brotherhood, sisterhood that demands that you be in that realm, that focus, that energy level that says, hey, we're all in this together. And the question is how can you engage somebody at home and not be that jerk or disconnected or whatever the case may be when you turn that switch off, when you go into that other realm. And officers struggle with that because there's so many demands on shift, 24, 48, whatever it is you're working. You got to have that demeanor. You got to have those sleeves rolled down. And when you go home, that ain't going to work a lot of times. And so how well can you adapt and turn into the other person? Now, is it Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or whatever? No, I don't think so. I don't think it has to be that severe. but you change individuals to be able to manage those different lifestyles to a degree. Your core value is the same, but y'all have described it, and you've described what the problem is: the maladjusting ability on either side. If you can't flip that switch on, you won't fit in. You won't be successful.
And Joe, the best thing you learned is that at work you're the boss, and at home you are not.
Bingo. I am blessed with an individual who's a lot smarter and a lot better looking than me, and I'll let her hold the reins and the steering wheel anytime she wants.
That's a good call. Well, so now we get into your final segment that you did, and this one is the one I'm pretty much most interested in because it's the thing that I really enjoy, where most people don't. And this is change. And we're talking about change in the fire service. So if you would talk about some of the things you saw change through your career and how we've adapted to those, and then we'll get into how we deal with change, how we're going to handle change, and where we're headed.
There's two kinds. You can go 1,000 ways of this, but I'm going to say there's two kinds of change. There's an evolutionary change that just brings us back where we were. And the fire service is great about those circles of evolution that we start out at point A, we go to B, we go to C, we end up going right on back to A where we started. And those changes are in whether the equipment or the tactics or the types of, engines that we have. And those changes are inevitable and will always be there. And as a officer or leader, those things can either frustrate the hell out of you and get you down and depressed, and we lose all the morale and all that kind of garbage, or you get smart enough to realize there's a bigger thing, and this fire service has been around a lot longer than me and you, and it's going to keep on being around a lot longer than me and you, and that cycle and that evolution of those changes are never going to end. What do I mean by that? I think we talked last time about nozzles or something. I mean, there's 1,000 examples you can give. That circular evolution of change is just always going to be there. The other side, though, are those change things that we need to recognize that are either economic or social or some cultural change that we've got to adapt, that maybe takes that evolutionary change and shifts it on the spectrum, moves it to another place. And those things do happen. Sometimes they're tactical. Sometimes it's the evolution of hazmat or evolution of rescue techniques or WMD, after 9/11. Some of those things take that evolutionary change and move it to another point. But sometimes it's just, you were talking about your colorful language. I mean, hey, when I first started, calling me a name was natural. And if you didn't, I thought you didn't like me, kind of thing. So there's changes that are driven by society that we have to adapt to. And the fire service isn't great at that because we always want to think arrogantly, we got it. Can't change our culture. You got to conform to us. And, okay. Again, is that part of that evolutionary thing that I can live with, or is that a paradigm shift that's got to go over here because of something else? So change is an interesting critter because it frustrates the hell out of people because either they want to change or they don't want to change, and sometimes that's on the same crew. And so, how do we juggle that, and how do we make something productive out of it, and how do we not be depressed or challenged by that, but just see it as part of life? And how do we as students of this profession educate ourselves to know what's just an evolutionary change we're going to go through and I'm not going to lose any sleep over versus something that's major, that's part of that socioeconomic cultural thing that I've got to adapt my tactics, my thoughts, my crew, my station, department, whatever towards. And the challenge is being able to figure those things out, be able to juggle it.
And Joe, you talked about things being on a cycle or circular in nature, where we try something, we change, and then we're right back to what we're doing. When they came out teaching hard from the yard, like this was some kind of brand new idea that nobody had done before, when people have been doing it decades before, and especially smaller departments, that's what you had to do. But that's no different than society. I mean, trends and dress attire, all things, kind of music, it just kind of goes around and around, and it seems like always in a constant state of change, but coming back. So I don't know if we'll ever think we ever beat that.
One of the great examples, I'm gonna give you an example before we get over, can we beat it? Great example. I'm going back to this health and safety conference because it really was a winner. One of the presenters that was there was talking about the work that they had done with UL to study the rates of carcinogenic impact, of contamination impact on gear and on the individuals fighting fires through a number of measured evolutions. And how it's interesting that through transitional attack, they were able to reduce the amount of carcinogens, the amount of contaminants on gear, way over half. I don't think it was 80%, but it was some stupidly high number. So now, wait a minute, you're telling me that if I implement something that's just been in the past 2 or 3 years, either a stigma, you either for it or against it, and if you were on one side, you were called names by the other side. I mean, if I start to deploy some of those tactics that have been around for decades, all of a sudden I can ensure some of my crew safety. Maybe I shouldn't take such a hard line over here. Maybe I ought to think about these things. And back to your point, there is never, well, it's hard. Okay, 90%. Find me a hard set thing that no matter what call you go to, no matter what fire you attend as an officer, this is the way we're going to do it every time. Doesn't happen. You've got to be intelligent enough, smart enough, trained enough, studied enough, read well enough to be able to adjust on the fly. And it's not procedural. I'm not talking about freelancing. I'm talking about just being able to figure things out and justify by what you're doing. And that's change. That's change. We hear every time we go to this, the Officers Academy, one of the most frustrating things that they have when we're sitting around those groups talking about them is what? It's about the fact that how do I go back home with all this energy and impact change on an organization or people or a leader or whatever that may not be there. So we know that the energy of change is there and desired. It's just how do we manage it and figure out whether it's something to get excited about or something that we got to roll with.
So, and I am always so curious of how change is accomplished in a large organization like a Columbia, like a Lexington, like a North Charleston. So I always bring this up. Chief Helms, you could say something today that just strikes a nerve in me, and it's like, man, we need to be doing that. By next Monday, I will have that change implemented in my department. How does change work in somebody enriched in tradition like a Columbia? How does that work?
Slow.
That's what I
Very
figured.
slow, methodical. I mean, it depends. I mean, honestly, I think it depends on what we're trying to change. If we're trying to change some type of a tactic and it's something new and what would be considered maybe innovative, that might be a little bit better, a little bit faster. I think Joe, and I don't want to get off subject a little bit, but Joe talked about, changing in some of the tactic stuff. We're good. In most cases, firefighters are good at changing on the fly. We don't have a cookie cutter approach to every fire. We should be able to read smoke. We should be able to see where the fire's at. Where's it going? What do we need to do to halt it, stop it, slow it down? How do we hold it till the next company can come in and help us get it knocked down, whatever it may be, right? We're good at that. Tactically, that's what we do. I think when at Columbia, when you're trying to change those other type of things, it becomes very slow. It becomes very methodical. And I think that, it takes a while to get that game plan moving because you've got to impact 500 plus, 500 people when you count our volunteer side, up to 600. So you've got a lot of people to impact. And I think you just, you take it one bite at a time and you try to do it slow. Chris can attest to this. We started rank academies back in probably 2012, 11, 12. And we're still not where we would want to be, or we wasn't when I left. They may have been able to accomplish a lot in the time I've been gone. But that change that's where we started making, I think, some positive changes. We were getting people in, teaching them how to make those same, I don't call it tactical decisions, but that same type of process to be able to change with personnel issues or equipment issues or station issues. And it's slow. And sometimes, in an organization the size of like Columbia, you don't control every decision. You may have a fleet manager you have to work with to get a truck fixed, or a logistics division that's got to be able to work with the building maintenance people to get your station repairs done and get in a budget where you can get the funding. So I think that it just depends on what you're trying to change. When you're very traditional, It's very hard. One of my good friends, Robbie O'Donnell, and I talked a lot about Charleston and how difficult it is to change. And that's just because of our history and how long we've been around and how large we are too. It makes it hard to get where you need to get and get the right people. I love that officer academy. I think it's a great thing that the state's done. And I also think that, Columbia's officer academy is the golden nugget that's going to help with that change and being a change agent. I think that's where it starts at. I can't say it enough. Our company officers spend more time with our firefighters than anybody else. As an assistant chief and having decision-making power, I had very little day-to-day, one-on-one contact with, firefighters and captains and battalion chiefs. I mean, that wasn't my role. Those captains and those battalions, those mid-level guys and gals are the ones that are really daily able to impact that change. So you got to find a way to get those folks understanding why we're changing, how we're going to change, how it's going to make us better. And hopefully you can get that message out and get it downrange. But it's difficult in a large department, no doubt.
Yeah, especially when it requires training. If we're changing a policy, that's a whole lot easier than we're changing some type of,
Yeah, we spent, I don't know, Chris probably could give me exact dates, but we spent probably close to 2 years just being able to get our new, command and control policies and stuff in play and get people really falling in line with what we were doing there. I mean, I'm talking from the captain level all the way up to the top. It took a long time to get that process through. 2 years is a long time when you're trying to make a huge operational change. You want to be able to do that a lot faster. You don't want to get people caught in between. And I think when we went with radio communications and we changed some of that and you have to start swapping channels and things like that takes time to get people to see it. But we adapt. But when you're talking the other side, that's soft skill side and that day-to-day stuff and how you talk with people and how you counsel people and manage people, and it's hard. It's really hard. And I think that that's one of the things that at Columbia that I was kind of proud we got going was our rank academies, because I do see a big impact. The chief of training there has got a great game plan and is moving that in the direction that the command staff is laid before him.
All right, Chief Gipp, I've got 2 questions for you. And I hate to even bring this up because I said I wasn't going to even say this word anymore, but there was in the fire service 2019, COVID comes and it requires change every day. We're getting new information daily. So when you've got an organization as big as Columbia, it was hard for me to keep up with my organization and all the changes and now what, the Fauci was saying or what, DHEC and what everybody else is saying on this is the way we need to handle it. How did y'all deal with that as a department, changing that much, that fast, that many times? How did y'all handle it? You're on mute.
Thanks. It was my children yelling in the background. That was a really hard time. And that's actually when I first came upstairs into administration in the Columbia Richmond Fire Department. One functional thing that we had to do was, instead of writing SOGs, standard operating guidelines for changing how we respond to medical calls, changing how we decontaminated equipment, was we fell back to a more agile tool of writing directives. So a directive, just a quick order, 1-page order. It says, okay, from now on, we're changing our medical response this way. We're going to try to have the patient come to the door if possible. We're going to have one person make contact, all that stuff. And we had to revise it continually. So one directive replaced another because we had to be able to be that agile. In thinking about fire departments and change, I use the analogy with my leadership teams a lot, that in so many things we're like this tremendous super cargo ship on the ocean. And one of those cargo ships, even if you're going to turn 45 degrees, takes miles to do that, to make this slow turn. And really what we need to be as an organization is a speedboat that is going along, and an obstacle suddenly there, and we can go right around it. But that takes a lot of structure. It takes a focus on responsibility and accountability. But going back to COVID, in that particular instance, I think it was serious enough and had everybody's attention. And y'all all remember back when it started, there was real fear, and people were really dying, and no one knew what to do. So it was a time of we had to change. All departments had to, all organizations had to. So I think it happened a little more fluidly than like, for example, if today we made a decision to I don't know, trying to think of some arbitrary, like everybody had to wear orange, or everybody had to wear a certain color on a certain day. There'd be all kinds of fight back and stuff. Whereas during the time of COVID, I think our agility was quicker because of that imperative, or that safety question. But that was a really difficult time. In normal days, like Jamie was saying, for when we were changing our operational tactics, it really took 2-3 years, maybe even 8 years to make the change complete, because there's so many factors, so many people, so many companies, that it really does make things complicated. And sometimes I have daydreams of how nice it would be to be how nice it would be to be able to say we're going to do this change and have it completed by the next week. But I think just because we're a large organization doesn't mean our problems are any different, because I believe the success of change depends on communication. So whether a department's big or small, big or small, if the communication isn't done with intentionality and carefully, change is going to fail. And I think that's the key, whether our officers are in a department with 1,000 people or 5 people.
But that communication, is different in a Columbia Fire Department because of the size. We can send emails out all day long, but when you're trying to filter it down the chain and you're trying to get 15 battalions on board, it's harder than getting 3 battalions on board. Or when you're going down into 84 captains, that's tough, and you've got to hit all those notes. And I know we're pressed for time, but in some, we would do what we call a mud rotation, where we could literally get people, together. It takes us, I think it's 8-10 weeks just to get through one rotation. And that may be, Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably longer than that now, but when we started that program, it took forever, and you only got so much time with them. So it's hard. It's not easy for any department. The bigger you are, I think the more difficult it can get, and it can be. And you have to rely on those officers below to be able to get that message and understand that message and communicate it as one voice. And that sometimes can be some of your problem, especially as you get new people in position. So it's just a constant communication is always going to be that thing that everybody says is the nugget. You got to get that nugget to make it work. And that can be difficult at times. But I think it can be difficult too in small departments. But I think it's the same thing. It's just on a larger scale.
Communication is important, but the ability to be able to adapt to that and accept it, back to that original change question, if the individual or the company or the station or the department has and I hate the word culture, but has that ability to be able to accept those things, it makes all of it run that much smoother. So you can go in the door of an organization and tell right off that whether they're going to be amenable to something or whether it's going to be rough. And the communication's true, absolutely not arguing the point, but communication can go smoother if you got people that's in the game, willing, accepting, part of a team. It's going to run smoother.
And so that's, we're at the time, but that's a huge question, Joe. How do we, because as leaders, I think this is our job. How do we build a team so that we have members who are listening and engaged? You know, what do we do as leaders to make that happen? And I think it's a lot of the things that we talked about today. It's about leading by example. It's about consistency. It's about doing the little things that communicate who we are.
So, Chief
And you
Kip,
as a company officer or a leader, that's it. Sorry.
Chief Kip, are you still using the directives?
No, we've rescinded many of them because they had to do with specifically how we were treating patients. And, you know, as our understanding of COVID changed, and as I think the disease changed, because I don't know all the science, but it definitely, at least the effects of the disease, I think we're seeing difference. Like we lost members of our department in that real terrible time. And now, and we had, I think at one time we had 45 people in quarantine. And now, you know, we might have 2 or 3 people in quarantine for COVID. So it's changed dramatically. So we've rescinded those. And
No,
but I think that,
I was just curious if you was using directives in other parts of the organization.
oh yes, yeah. And my idea, like tomorrow, we had an accident within our department with an apparatus. It was our fault, and the administration's fault. This is the 3rd time it's happened in probably the last year and a half. And so wake up call, we need to do something about it. So that will be in the form of a directive. So, you know, immediate order, stop doing this now. And soon, you know, then it'll be followed with change in the guideline.
So those directives have made your organization more agile.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a good point, because that's a way of making immediate change. And sometimes the directives have to be amended almost immediately because there's some unforeseen consequence that we need to.
They're used as stopgap measures. It's just
Yeah.
a way to pause what we're doing to be able to reset. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, because I think, you know, the work that it takes to make change is sometimes the resistance to change. It takes a lot of work. And when we started this segment, I told you that I am a fan of change, and not so much change as evolution. I think as a fire service, you should be evolving always, because if not, 5 years from now we got to change a whole bunch of stuff. But if I'm evolving in 5 years, then it's just a minor course correction.
I think that's a really good point.
What I would like to ask y'all, because I know we're tight on time, and we have a time limit before Brooke starts buzzing us. But what I want to know is, because the frustration from company officers, they have good ideas. They have ideas of change, and the organization's resistance for one reason or another, doesn't matter why. What I would like to know from y'all, and we'll keep these answers as short as possible, but still get your point across. What do I need to bring to you so that you value my change? What do I, is a leader of an organization, what do I need to bring to you? What do I need to show you? What do I need to prove for you to not accept or make sure that you do it, but that my change makes sense for the organization, for our citizens we serve? So Joe, go ahead and start us off.
Park your passion and come with me with facts, figures, numbers, data, research. Show me that you've done your homework. We're all passionate about what we do, and we can all show emotion all day long, but that's not going to win me over. And so what's going to win me over is to say, hey, whatever role, whatever rank, here's what I think. Here's why. Here's the research I've done. Here's what I found as some options. And I think option number 1 is the best. And I'd like to implement it as a trial factor. And we'll try to put this thing in place. You'll give me the chance. Here's what it's going to cost. Here's the risk factor. And, and here's my timetable to report back to you. You got my attention. You didn't come in screaming. You weren't coming in crying. You weren't coming in hollering. And passions are important. Park your emotions. Give me the facts and figures.
Chief Helms?
From where I sit at Columbia, it's a little different than what Chris had to sit with. With Chris, it's more about, does it make sense? And he'll get into that tactically and operationally. For me, I'm worried about HR rules and regulations, city policies, validations of our promotional processes. So I have to look at it more of a legal type of step, which was hard for people to understand. But that's probably a lot of it. it could be difficult sometimes to make a quick change when you're dealing with those types of things that you built years and years or had years and years and years to build into a system that you were trying to keep as close to airtight as possible. So I think my role at Columbia, the change is a lot slower possibly than what possibly it could be with other, divisions within that fire department.
Chief Kip.
That's a really great question. And one of the things I when I leave the office every day, usually I have pages of of different ideas that guys have, because like we have a comment from one of our viewers saying, wait, I am 95% passionate. And that's how we get the job done. I mean, we want passion in the fire service. And I kind of joke with people that I might go to a meeting and people get kind of, very I don't want to use the word passion, very animated and antagonistic and contentious, and then they might apologize and say, no, that passion, that's what makes us, that's the energy that can make us the professionals that we need. But to go off what Joe said, when someone comes with when someone can come with facts and figures or specific data that supports the change, that's the first important step. The second important step is when they come for a plan of execution, come with a plan of execution, and basically saying, I want to lead this, because there's this real thing. I think of it as the time/energy currency of leaders, that we're human, and there's only a certain number of hours in the day, and there's 10,000 things that we have to do. So we have to continually prioritize, revise. And what we need is, like Joe said, we need a clear picture of why the change is needed and what it will look like on the other side as much as possible. But then that time, we need someone to step up with the time/energy to execute it, to be the incident commander to make that change happen. And then I feel like as leaders, then it's our job to do everything we can, well, like Jamie said, to make sure that everything is going to be clean, make sure it fits with legal expectations, HR expectations, but then as leaders to support that champion of this change with whatever is needed, with removing obstacles or providing funding or whatever that is.
Yeah, good deal. So I guess if my guys want to sell me on change, you got to, and I'll listen to any change that you have an idea about. But the moment they get to where it's cool, I want to change because this is cool, or this is what somebody else does, this is what the big city does, I'm all out. But if you show me how it's better for our citizens and you show me how it enhances our mission, I'm all ears. So show me those things, I'm in.
Well, and I think that's a really important point, and that's been the theme in all of our talks, is tying things to the mission. When we tie things to the mission, that's the basis.
Well, and that's kind of my point, and I'm not arguing with you at all. I get it
Please
about
do.
park and passion. My assumption is that I'm going to have everybody in the organization is going to be passionate. What sets you apart and your idea apart is whether you've got some basis, some meat on the bones, some content that you want to come to me with. Everybody's going to be passionate, and if you're not passionate, you probably don't belong here. But hey, I thought this through, Chief, and here's what I got as an idea, and here's what I want to do, and here's what I want to try, and here's the time frame I've got, and here's what it's going to cost. And you come to me with something more than just I'm fired up because I read a magazine article or I went to this doggone class and heard somebody else had an idea. You've thought this thing through, and you've parked your passion a little bit for that, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm right with you. It's almost like this harnessed passion or something. Like it's the energy that we need, but dressed in the facts and the justification that's necessary.
Well, I'll tell you what, I thought this was a great conversation. As I said, like we were talking before we got on, I just enjoyed the talk. If people tune in and watch, great. If they don't, I still had a great night. Now, so there's a couple of housekeeping items that I got to do. Talk about our next podcast. It's going to be Matthew Goings. He's with Dorchester County Fire, and he's talking about the young fire service officer. So if you know Matthew, he's went through the Leadership Institute. He's passionate, which you'll like. Great guy, and I look forward to those. And I can't thank you, Joe and Jamie, for getting in here with me and Chief Kip. We appreciate it. But before I get off, Joe, I want you to talk about Legislative Day just a little bit, and make sure that everybody on here knows how important it is and what we accomplish at the State House when we do that.
The core message: you have got to have a relationship with the members of the General Assembly from your area. It doesn't matter what rank you are. You need a personal relationship with those individuals so that you can pick up the phone and call your representative or call your senator on a day in and day out basis, just to be able to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. I want to keep you informed. That's the core basis of all of this. Legislative Day, April the 5th, Columbia State House grounds. We do it every year. That is just like icing on the cake. That is an opportunity for us to come and show and tell and get together as a group to affect an opportunity to talk about some big key issues that are available on our association's website. Thanks to Rick Dunn and Brooke for putting those things up. PalMade 800's on there. VSAFE funding is on there. Some we were talking about S108 earlier as far as some line of duty death benefits. So there's a number of items on there that are important, but it all begins back home with relationships. So do you have back home the ability to pick up your phone, or when you pass somebody on Main Street, do you know the face of your senator or your House member? Nobody else is going to do that for you. That's got to be your responsibility. You've got to have that relationship.
And Joe, could you comment on DEI Summit?
Absolutely. 31st of this month, we've got a program that it's really excites me because it has some great potential. Forget about any kind of catchphrases or words. Our committee is diversity, equity, and inclusivity. And the DEI Summit is designed to be able to bring people together to have communication, have a conversation, just like you're doing right here with these sessions. Just have people to talk, be able to share ideas and share thoughts and try to have an open dialogue about what we are as a community in the fire service. And we've had some really good response. We've got a lot of people coming to this thing, and I'm excited about that. That pumps me up, and I'm looking forward to being part of that conversation. If any of the individuals within the sound of my voice are interested, please go to the association website to our events page, and we would love to have you sign up to participate on that. It's it'll be a 4, 5, 6 hour conversation on the last day of this month. We'd love to have you at the Denny Auditorium at the Fire Academy to join us in that conversation. And guess what? We'll feed you lunch while you're there.
Well, thank you all. It's a great night, great conversation. Thank everyone that joined in, that watched, and maybe somebody who watches it recorded later. Appreciate you listening to us. We'll be back again next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're off.